President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, now yesterday, President Biden released the second budget of his administration, a strong, forward-looking, and optimistic vision of our country's potential. It's a budget calling for greater investments in the things that make the biggest difference in the lives of middle-class families and in those working to get to the middle class. More support for our schools, increased funding for child care and health care services, stronger investments in clean energy and climate change mitigation, support for our farmers and small businesses, as well as relief for our strained supply chains. The Republican leader asserted yesterday that the president's budget is fundamentally disconnected from what America needs right now. This begs the question: just how does the Republican leader think the recovery of the past 12 months came to pass? We've seen the greatest jobs recovery in history, the strongest economic surge in 40 years, and a steady return to normal after the worst health crisis of modern times. Does he think it happened by magic? Of course not. These were the results of the right leadership pursuing the right policies at the right moment in our country. Robust investment in vaccines, aid for families trying to feed their kids through a crisis, help for businesses and local communities struggling to stay open. And as our recovery continues under President Biden, Republicans seem to think the right answer is to shortchange the American people and cut off vital resources that help our country grow. Republicans can't stand the thought of asking the ultra-rich to pay their fair share. And as a result, efforts to strengthen the middle class, which would be paid for by taxes on those at the very top, are anathema to them. Keeping the wealthy wealthy is more important for Republicans than strengthening the middle class. Republicans indeed seem to think it's fundamentally disconnected to increase investments in things like public education, Pell Grants, Title I, which helps the kids most at need. Republicans believe it's somehow wasteful or far left to dare help families afford child care and pre-K, which never have been pricier than they are today. And beholden as they are to corporate polluters, Republicans seem to think it's radical for the federal government to dedicate resources to a clean energy future, more renewables, more clean cars right here from America, and a more prosperous planet for our kids and our grandkids. But of course, Republicans think it's perfectly fine to try and rip away health care from millions of Americans and push trillion-dollar tax cuts that overwhelmingly benefit the wealthy. But helping the middle class with child care and education and health care is a bridge too far for our Republican friends. Sad. For all these reasons, the contrast between President Biden's budget and the vision we're seeing coming from Republicans is stark and glaring. One budget, ours, is for the working and middle class. The other, the Republican budget, is an offering entirely for the ultra-wealthy. Now, on the Cook nomination. Today, the Senate will continue its work of advancing President Biden's well-qualified nominees. Last night, I filed cloture on 5 additional nominees, and this morning, the Senate will vote on a motion to discharge Ms. Lisa Cook from the Banking Committee. As a reminder, a motion to discharge is necessary in this Congress whenever a nominee receives a deadlock vote in committee. So the steps we're taking later today are exceedingly important, but frankly, it's unfortunate that they're necessary at all. Not very long ago, a nominee of Ms. Cook's qualifications would have sailed towards final confirmation with bipartisan support. She serves on the advisory board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago and is a professor of economics at Michigan State. Coming from humble beginnings in rural Georgia, where her family fought back against racial segregation, she'd be the first black woman ever to sit on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. She is truly historic, in addition to being deeply qualified. For as much as Republicans talk about inflation, it's bewildering and totally discrediting for them to reflexively oppose a qualified nominee like Ms. Cook, precisely tasked with helping the Fed hold down costs and maintain strong employment. Nevertheless, we will move forward with her nomination today with a motion to discharge. The bottom line is this: the Fed is not a political institution. Ms. Cook's position is not a political role. And for Republicans to obstruct her nomination purely for political purposes is deeply troubling and hurts our efforts to lower costs for American families. And now on the competitiveness legislation. Last night, with a strong bipartisan vote of 68 to 28, the Senate passed an amended version of the House Jobs and Competitiveness legislation. It was amended and passed, to be clear, with the same language the Senate approved last summer when we approved USICA, the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act. This bill now heads to the House, and I'm optimistic that the House will be able to act on a motion requesting a conference committee very soon. It remains our goal to initiate a conference committee by the end of this work period. Once again, I want to thank all of my colleagues for their good faith work on this bill. This is the culmination of years of work on both sides of the aisle. Senator Young and I began work on the Endless Frontier Act in 2019. There's more work to be done, but we nevertheless took an important step last night towards our goal of enacting this legislation into law. And in doing so, I believe this bill will go down as one of the most important steps Congress can take towards creating more jobs, fixing our supply chains, and refueling another generation of American ingenuity that will strengthen our economy for a long, long time. On COVID, I'm continuing to hold negotiations with my Republican colleagues on a much-needed COVID public health response funding. Even though cases and deaths and hospitalizations are thankfully down and falling across the board, it's still necessary and a matter of great urgency that we replenish funding for more vaccines, more therapeutics, more testing, and for new vaccines to meet the challenge of any new variant. The sooner we have these in place when, God forbid, a new variant hits, the healthier we'll stay, the more life to normal will stay normal. To deny it now, and then 3 months from now or 6 months from now or whenever be unprepared and let it spread unchecked till the COVID variant's tentacles are too deep in our society makes no sense whatsoever. But to pass more COVID public health response funding, we need bipartisan cooperation. It's a responsibility of both Republicans and Democrats to make sure we have the tools and resources in place that will keep the virus down, keep our schools, keep our communities open. We're not there yet on reaching an agreement, but we're going to keep working in good faith to get there. I hope we can reach an agreement with our Republican colleagues very soon, because nobody wants to find themselves in a situation where cases suddenly start rising again and we aren't ready to respond quickly. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.